Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade, and well, in this one I wanted to make my Retribution Paladin guide for Season 3 of The War Within. So here you'll find all the information necessary so you can start doing your raids and push Mythic Plus, but mostly Mythic Plus because that's the content I do the most. So with that being said, let's start with the video. Okay guys, let's start with a small recap on all the things that happened from last season to this one to Retribution Paladins. First of all, we have to talk about the most important change. This is to Divine Hammers. So Blizzard nerfed this from a 1-minute cooldown spell to a 2-minute cooldown spell. They buffed the damage and nerfed the duration that we can have this on, so there's no longer infinite Divine Hammers that you're going to be having. It's going to last around 20 to 30 seconds depending on the circumstances and if you get any mechanics, you know. It's still really powerful nonetheless because its interaction with Templar is still really strong with Empyrean Hammers. Whenever you have your Divine Hammers, you're just gonna make it rain extra damage on your target, so it's really going to be a core part of any Templar build. Other than that, Blizzard buffed a bunch of our abilities, you know, Divine Storm, Final Verdict, but a bunch of her spells got buffed to compensate for the nerf of Divine Hammers. Now, after that, we have to talk about the new tier set. So the new tier set has a different effect depending on the hero talent that you're going to be picking. For this season, Templar is still going to be the stronger version, you know, Herald of the Sun, even though Blizzard buffed that thing and gave it a personalized, you know, tier set bonus. Templar is just still a lot better. I think, in my opinion, it's because Herald's way of functioning is just a dot playstyle, which is not really good for Retribution. You know, we normally are just upfront damage and burst, and Herald just doesn't do that. So I'm gonna talk about the tier set bonus for Templar that we're going to be using. The 2-set bonus, your Empyrean Hammers deal 20% increased critical strike damage, and its critical strikes have a 50% chance to grant you an additional stack of Light's Deliverance. So that means that big hammers are going to fall and do more damage because of critical strikes, and you're going to get Hammers of Light a lot often because of the charges, the stacks you're going to be getting. So it's a really powerful 2-set bonus. After that, the 4-set is Hammer of Light deals flat out 35% increased damage on your main target and hits 3 additional targets. So currently, Hammer of Light hits 5 things, now it's going to hit 8 things, which is going to make it really strong on those number of target pulls, you know, which are generally what you pull in most Mythic Plus dungeons. So it's going to be really strong there. Additionally, you can cast your Hammer of Light an additional time after Wake of Ashes. So yeah, that's going to be really fun. Just an incredible amount of burst at the start of your rotation. So that's going to be our tier set bonus for the season. One more thing I'm going to mention here: when do you want to swap to your new tier set bonus? Whenever you have 4 of the new one. Until that, just use the old 4-piece. It's still really decent. It's gonna help you push those first levels of Mythic Plus and raiding. Now let's go into the specific talent setups for raiding and Mythic Plus. Okay guys, now let's talk about the specific builds that you're going to be using for Mythic Plus and raiding. So I'm gonna leave the builds down in the description of the video, and I'm gonna give you one for each type of content and talk about the small changes and adaptations that you can make for different situations. So first of all, let's talk about Mythic Plus, and obviously it's going to be a Templar build. On the general side of the talent tree, we're going to take our traditional paladin utility. You know, you want your crowd control with blinding light, your cleanse with cleanse toxins just in case. After that, you want all your blessings: blessing of freedom, blessing of protection, and blessing of sacrifice. So yeah, all the traditional paladin utility. A small adaptation that you can make here for Mythic Plus is using the 1-minute blessing of sacrifice. This we can do removing 1 point in life first blessing and putting it here in sacrifice of the just, and bam, you can help now someone that's squishy or needs a defensive in your group. If you're going to do that, also change your unrelenting charger to bonds of fellowship so you take less damage from your blessing of sacrifice. So yeah, that's the small adaptation that you can make. Now on the retribution side of the talent tree, this is going to be really fast because there's really no changes since the last season. It's still going to be the same talents that we're going to be using. Obviously, Divine Hammer is nerfed now, so you're going to have it less often, and because of that, we're going to have a small change here. Instead of using Empyrean Legacy, which was really useful to extending the duration of Divine Hammers, now instead of that you can put that point anywhere else, you know. I recommend putting it either in Searing Light, or you can also put it in Divine Arbiter, depending on the density of mobs in the dungeon. You know, if there's a bunch of mobs, Searing Light is going to be better. If there's less mobs and more priority targets or boss encounters that are really annoying, Divine Arbiter is going to be a bit better. The same goes for our cooldown of choice, you know, Final Reckoning or Execution Sentence. If the mob has high density of mobs, go with Final Reckoning. If the mob is more, if the dungeon is more boss focused and less density of mobs, go with Execution Sentence. So yeah, those are the changes that you can do for Mythic Plus. Now let's go into the rating build. Okay guys, and well, this is the rating build that I recommend you guys to use. On the general side of the talent tree, we're still going to be taking basically the same things as in Mythic Plus, with a small change that instead of Light First Blessing, because we don't Divine Storm too much in raiding situations, we're gonna take a Light's Revocation so you can use all your defenses even if you have Forbearance. Well, not all, but your most important defense of your Divine Shield, even if you used, for example, Lay on Hands on yourself before. So that's pretty handy in certain situations if you get hit by something really hard. And on the Retribution side of the talent tree, we're going to be taking, obviously, because it's raiding, everything that increases our single target output. Now, for us, it's really good that Retribution Paladins have decent cleave even on our single target build. But if you really want to get some extra cleave, you can always remove a point in Penitence and put it here in Blessed Champion, so your Judgment and Crusader Strike can hit additional targets. Yeah, that would be a small adaptation if the encounter does have a lot of adds that you have to take care. But for most types of encounters, this should suffice. Now let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay guys, let's talk about stats. So, stats did shift a bit for us Retribution Paladins. This is mostly because of the nerf to Divine Hammers, since we don't have this all the time, you know, 100%. The interaction with Empyrean Hammers and Critical Strike got a bit weaker. So, yes, we still want some Critical Strike, but now Mastery is going to be a better stat for us. So, our stats should look something like this for the season. First of all, obviously Strength on the top, because it's normally item level. After that, you want to get a bunch of Mastery. After that, you want to get either Critical Strike or Haste are decent stat for us, but I do recommend getting at least 30% Haste to make your rotation feel a lot faster and smoother. After that, you can just get all the crit you want. And finally, it's Versatility, which you should avoid as much as possible. But at the tail end of the patch, once you have a ton of gear, most of our secondary stats, you know, Haste, Mastery, and Crit, are going to be in the diminishing returns, making Versatility not a horrible stat to have at the end. Okay guys, let's talk about embellishments and trinkets. So, first of all, embellishments. We still want to use 2 downthread linens because they just gives us nice free stats, even though embellishments are not that important this late in the expansion because they don't scale with item level. It's just nice to have the free stats. Now the problem of embellishments this season is that there's a lot of slots that are like set in stone. First of all, one of the prime slots to put it is our cloak, but that's our Rashi Wrap, so that's a no-go. The other slot would be our boots, but those boots are taken by the Interloper Plated Sabatons once you get those from raiding, because they are just incredibly strong, making your cape trigger 50% more, so you're always wanting to get those boots. So now, the other slots that we are left with are our bracers, which is going to be one of their slots for our embellishments, and the other one is a bit tricky because, well, we have the disc, but this is, you're eventually going to stop using it. So one of the slots where you can put your other embellishments is going to be your belt once you can get the high item level slot here, you know, for your embellishment. Other slot that you can put it after you get your tier sets is one of your off slots for your tier set. Let's say you get your head, your hands, your chest, and your legs from your tier set, then you can make your embellishment on the shoulder slot, because shoulders, boots, belts have the same stat allocation, so you shouldn't be losing too much if you put your embellishment there. Okay, now let's go into trinkets. Okay guys, let's talk about trinkets now. The best in slot combo for Retribution Paladins this season is going to come from the raid. The first one that we're going to talk about is the Astral Antenna. This is just a very solid stat stick that gives you main stat strength, and then whenever it procs, it gives you critical strike. Multiple applications of this proc can overlap, meaning that sometimes if you proc it once, twice, or 3 times, you're going to get a massive amount of extra critical strike. So just a really powerful trinket. Now, the next trinket that we're going to talk about is the Arras Ritual Forge, another one of our best in slot. This is a 2-minute cooldown on use trinket that has critical strike on it, and whenever you use it, you get a ton of main stat. So you should always macro this trinket with your divine hammers for maximum value. The only downside of this trinket is that it costs 15% of your maximum health to activate it, which shouldn't really be a problem, but because normally you don't use your cooldowns when you're dying. So if you can't get the raid trinkets, luckily this season there are a ton of really good trinkets from Mythic Plus dungeons. So let's go into those now. Okay, so the first dungeon trinket that we have to talk about is the Arakara Sack Brute. So this is a really strong trinket that has haste, a stat that we really like, and stacking main stat with a small proc whenever the effect ends. So all around, a really decent trinket to have. The next option comes from the Priori of the Sacred Flame, and it's the Signet of the Priori. So this is a 2-minute cooldown trinket which lines perfectly with the Divine Hammers, and it gives you main stat strength, and then whenever you use it, you get your highest secondary stat. On top of that, if there's other people with the same trinket, you're going to get the stats that they get, and you're going to also give them stats as well. So just a really well-rounded trinket, and really good if you can't get the one from the raid. After that, we have Operation Floodgate, and there we have the Improvised Sephorian Pacemaker. So this trinket needs no introduction. We have been using this thing for the past season, and it's just a really reliable stat stick that gives you main stat strength and some critical strike on a proc. So just really good. After that, we have the trinket from Tasavish, the Veiled Market, the Solia's Secret Technique. This trinket is just very reliable because it's one of those stat sticks that just gives you stats, doesn't have a proc. But there's a small caveat: you have to select a person and you're going to get their highest secondary stats and give them some, you know. So sometimes it's tricky. Maybe you can't find a person that that has, let's say, mastery, you know, or something like that, but that rarely happens. There's always someone that you can get the stats from. So just a really reliable stat stick. Now let's go to the honorable mention. So I want to put the little badge from PvP. There's going to be a badge this season, obviously. So the badge is just a really powerful on-use trinket at the start of a patch because it's reliable. You know, you can get it by farming some conquest, and it comes at champion item level, so that's a pretty decent starting point to get your first keys done. So if you can do some PvP, get your little badge of ferocity to start the season and do some Mythic Plus. Now let's go to the next part of the video. Okay guys, so to end the video, I want to talk about enchantments, gems, and consumables. First of all, for your weapon, you want to get the Stoneborn Artistry enchantment that just gives you some mastery on a proc. For your cloak, you want to get Chant of Winning Grace. This is going to give you some avoidance. For your chest, you want to get Crystalline Radiance. This is giving you some extra main stat. For your bracer, you want to get Chant of Armored Avoidance for extra avoidance and resilience on AoE hits. For your legs, you want the Stoneborn Armor Kit, gives you some main stat and stamina. For your feet, you want the Scout's March for extra movement speed. For your rings, you want any combination of Radiant Mastery, Radiant Haste, or Radiant Critical Strike. The 3 of them are valid depending on how your personal stats are looking from your simulations. Now let's go into gems. The only gem that is mandatory to get is the Culminating Blasphemite, which is this white one that has main stat and also gives you extra critical strike damage depending on the other colors of gems that you have. So after that, you want to get one Onyx gem, which is the purple ones, one Ruby gem, which is the red ones. You want to get an Emerald gem, which is the green ones, and a Sapphire gems, which is the blue ones, even though it has versatility, just because you want to get the max value of your Culminating Blasphemite. After that, all your other gem slots should be filled with any combination of Mastery Crit, Mastery Haste, or Crit Mastery, Crit Haste. Now let's go into consumables. Okay, so for consumables, for most raiding encounters, you want to get your Flask of Alchemical Chaos. You know, it just gives you the highest amount of stats. But if you're someone that doesn't like your stats rotating a lot, you know, personally I don't like it, The other options that you can go for are the Flask of Tempered Mastery or the Flask of Tempered Swiftness. This is going to depend on how your stats are allocated. After that, for your potion of choice, you want to get your Tempered Potion, which is going to obviously give you a bunch of secondary stats. After that, you want the Algari Mana Oil for your weapon or the Ironclad Whetstone. Normally it's going to be the Mana Oil though, because secondary stats have a really high value for us. After that, for your food, you want to get, normally Belladar's Bounty is just fine, giving you your highest secondary stat, but if you don't and want a more specific stat, you can go and get the Salt Baked Seafood, which gives you Mastery and Critical Strike. Pretty decent food you have. Now for your healing potion of choice, you want to get the new ones, you know, the Invigorating Healing Potion. Okay, now after that, a bit more optional is the Augment Rune, you know, the Crystallized Augment Rune, if you can buy it from the auction house. But once we get to 18 reputation level with the Kareshi Trust, you can actually buy an Augment Rune that is called the Ethereal Augment Rune from Omsirk in Tazavesh, which costs 100k gold. So it's a big investment, but it's going to pay off eventually, and you can get free main stat from that. And well guys, that's going to be the end of the video. So one more thing before I go, I'm going to start streaming again from the start of this season, so you can always drop by and ask me any question that you have. I'm always happy to answer them. And well, I hope the guide was useful, and if it was, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching everyone.